Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and I am here with the beautiful Stephanie. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And Walnut,
I'm so excited to be here.
if you're experiencing laggy issues with the connection, we're having a morning, afternoon of it, so it's a whole thing. But Stephanie, please can I get you to introduce yourself to the Walnuts who are listening if they haven't met you before?
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be on. I love what you're doing and your message. And I just love the podcast, first off. I'm Stephanie Napolitano, and I'm a romance author. My debut novel, Pretend for Me, came out in November. It was a labor of love. And I started writing, through a hardship in my life. And it really just catapulted me into figuring out what I wanted to do. And I want to follow my dreams. And I'm also going to be starting my own podcast. So I'm so happy to get like this behind the scenes, sneak peek of like everything before I start my own.
Oh, I love that. Podcasting is so much fun, but yeah, as you've experienced today, it is true, wonderful, blissful chaos in the background. So, welcome to the world of podcasting.
Very on brand, loosely organized.
I feel like it, with your author career as well, you'll know with deadlines and stuff like that, it's quite similar. So, Stephanie, tell me a little bit about Pretend for Me and how it kind of like came to be. I would love to know. I like how you've sort of mentioned that through the hardship in your life, you decided to like create your own happily ever after. Um, can I ask you a
Yes.
little bit more about that? And like, yeah, I'd love to dig into that a bit more.
Absolutely. Pretend for Me is a second chance romance about two orphans who grew up in foster care together. They were each other's everything until one of them gets adopted and the other one just ages out. Matthew, who is adopted, gets adopted by a rich family who aids in breaking them up. And eventually they don't see each other until 10 years later, until Chance Encounter reunites them.
Oh,
And then it's can they find their way back together without pretending?
oh, I love that. What a
And I
one.
think that like that whole story, uh, thank, thank you. I think it came to me. I was actually newly postpartum. It was like 6 months postpartum, and I had my baby napping on my chest, and it was like a daydream almost. And I couldn't get it out of my head. It's the opening scene of the book where they have their big fight at 18 years old, and they're about to break up. And she had sabotaged her chances of being adopted. It gets revealed early in the book, so it's not spoiler or anything like that. She sabotaged her chances of getting adopted in order to stay with him in foster care, only for him to get adopted a few years later. So that whole scene, it's a big argument, came to me very early on, and I couldn't get out of my head. And I'm like, okay, this is like would make a really good book, and I loved reading so much. But I never really thought to write in for years. And after having my son, my marriage started to fall apart. And I was really thinking about, like you said, finding my own happily ever after and learning to put myself first for the first time in my life for my son, because, it starts with you. You have to put yourself together before you're good to anybody. And I had to learn that, like, in the trial by fire kind of way. And so I think that really catapulted me into following my dreams, that I've always wanted to write a book, and I just was never brave enough to do it. And so it kind of gave me that, like, courage that I needed to, like, I let it spin in my head for about 4 months. And I was like, you know what? I'll write it. I'll write the first scene. If it's horrible, I won't continue. I thankfully had my friend who's my editor. She's wonderful, encouraging me every chapter. She would read it chapter by chapter and encourage me. And I sat on it for a while, and I was like, you know what? what's the point in writing this if I'm not going to share it with the world? You mull it over, and it's like, okay, I just need to release it.
Um, I love this story I love what you've said on so many different levels because, first of all, I just want to praise you and say that I'm so proud of you for actually writing the entire book and publishing it. It is no easy, from experience, it is no easy feat to have your heart and soul spilled into words and then put it out publicly for people to look at, let alone actually say you're going to write a book and actually do it. Those are two separate things. So well done and congratulations because
Yes.
writing and publishing is not for the faint of heart.
Thank you so much.
Um, Secondly,
Thank you.
the postpartum and relationships, and I've just talked about an episode where like our relationship had has taken like a little hit and what we're kind of doing about it, but the whole I like putting yourself first and all of that stuff is just the definition of being a walnut, let alone the courageous act of actually writing something that replicates how you feel and all of those things, whether it be in metaphor in a fictional story or not. Um, so yeah, can fully relate, and I love the idea of channeling hard things into something so warm and delicious, and something that might help other people just escape into as well. Is that kind of was that sort of the track that you were kind of going down when you decided, oh, I want other people to see this?
Yes. And thank you so much for your kind words. It means you don't know the world to me because this is like this first story is so personal to me. Like I'm writing my second's done, and then I'm writing my third, and I'm like, they're magical, but this like my first one had like such a like you said, it was like it's a second chance romance, and I think that I was projecting my own like traumas onto it because I just wanted like a second chance and I like of my own. And thank you, I really just appreciate your kind words, but also I want other people to know that you can do hard things. And while it's scary, it's terrifying to press publish, it's terrifying to pick up the pen to write a book, it's terrifying to leave the relationship for you earlier today, where if we're not brave, what are we doing? Like, we need to channel our courage, and we only have one life, and we have to live it as authentically as we can, even if it's like when we're scared.
I agree. That is so delicious and so lovely. Stephanie, now let's go back to the being brave thing because I know that there are walnuts listening who have dabbled with just the thought of writing their own book, let alone publishing. As we talk about, these are two separate things. But when you got to that point of like, oh my God, I'm shitting myself, I'm gonna write a book, or I'm going to send this to my editor friend to read. So she's basically going to see inside my soul and see me naked. What was going through your mind, and how did you push through the because there's the fear that comes along with doing something scary and new. How did you go, like, how did you get to where you are now with those feelings that were there in those particular pieces of the puzzle?
I think, well, I think first of all, I had to conquer my own, like one of my own fears very deeply of my marriage imploding so early postpartum. So I think that after that, it's like, after you go through something so big, it's like everything else kind of seems tinier. But then I also did sit on it for quite a while,
Yeah.
like my story. And then once I wrote it, I wrote the first chapter. I can remember like I wrote in my notes pad. It wasn't even anything fancy or anything. I just needed to get it down on paper. And I was like, you know what? I need to try this. It might be horrible, but it's my own. Like, I didn't think about publishing or even that it would be a book, maybe like a short story at that point. But
Yeah.
I was like, I need to share it with somebody. I want to see if it's like, if it could be anything because I think it can be. And I've had to believe in myself. I had to give myself like the same grace that I give other people when I'm giving them advice. I think that that was like going through my head. It's like, well, I have a lot of author friends, and I would encourage them in the same way I need to encourage myself. And I had to stand up for myself for like the first time ever.
Wow, just so powerful, Stephanie. Like, and I just know how hard that is to just push through with an idea and keep it going until it's an actual thing in the world, like an actual physical thing that you can hold and touch. I would love to know on like a personal note, if you don't mind. So obviously feel free if you don't. But with the postpartum and the marriage thing, I just like, oh my gosh, my heart just feels so heavy and sore, because I can just kind of relate to that because you do in this kind of like weird phase of life. And apologies, Walnut, I know we always talk about baby things, but I'm just so in it right now. You do come last. You come so last all the time, and it's no one's fault. It just kind of happens as the baby builder or the baby milker, whatever, all the things. How, yeah, I guess, how did you know that?
Yes.
How did, because I feel like I actually went crazy. I feel like I lost my mind. It was not a good time. I was in a really bad place. I'm kind of coming out the other side now, but I wasn't even in my body for a good amount of time. Um, how did you know at that point in your life that, I mean, were there obviously signs that like your relationship was really just, it wasn't right anymore? Or like, yeah. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Um, I I think you choose the partner you think you deserve.
Mm,
And I think I chose for what I thought I wanted, and what felt safe, and what felt comfortable. And I think as you grow and evolve, it's either you're growing and evolving in the same place. And I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't bumps in the road and like you don't like, I mean, if we're going with a metaphor, it doesn't mean like one train doesn't stop and the other train like keeps going, but eventually you meet each other again, right?
yeah.
And I think that we were like on two separate tracks, like in two separate worlds.
Yeah.
And then there was like a catalyst moment where, very early postpartum where I just knew we couldn't come back from it. And I just like remember looking at my partner, my former partner, and saying, I don't think that this is going to work. And you try and you try, and I remember we tried I can say I tried very hard, and I had a lot of like hope, and which is not like a natural thing for me to have like so much hope into something like that we could come back from it, just and especially just for my son, not even for myself.
Mm.
um and then you just realize, you know what, I'm fighting a fight that doesn't need to be fought anymore, and I need to fight for myself.
Wow. I
But
think,
I think what's something I would love to share, with, oh, sorry,
no, you go ahead, keep going.
something I'd love to share with you because you're so early in it. You're doing amazing, and like relationships do change postpartum. And my experience, I don't want to like scare anybody because my experience is so different than like other people's. And to your point, I didn't feel like a person for at least 2 years. Like I'm 3.5 years into it, and I just coming out of it and kind of feel like a person again, like a little bit. Like, and you still like you have that. I don't think our old selves are ever going to be there. Like 100%. Maybe it's like half and then half. And then you kind of like have to like dig it out of yourself. You're like, oh, I remember her. And like, but no, you're doing amazing. And if you don't feel like yourself and you feel like you've gone mad, you have, because I think that the postpartum experience, especially early on, I was just like throwing it out there, and I finished it so quick, the book so quickly. And it was like delusional. And then when I look at it now, I'm like, oh wow, I finished it so like in like a tizzy. Like I was like in a daze. And it's magical, but it's hard. And like that's that thing where two things can be true at the same time. It's really, really hard to be a mom and to have your whole life change. And it's something that sometimes our partners cannot relate to. But at the same time, you love it, but it doesn't mean it's not hard.
I love everything that you've just talked about there, Stephanie, because on Walnut Wednesday we talk about a lot about polarity and duality. And since my condition, I have never felt two things at once so strongly ever. I've said on a previous episode, I've never felt more like a failure or hopeless or horrible or like shit about myself where while at the exact same time feel so empowered, like a badass, like this temple goddess who just like did all this amazing stuff. And I feel both at the exact same time. And it's really, really difficult to explain to somebody that hasn't lived it. And especially in this case, our partners, because they don't often understand, which yeah, it's really wild. So I just want to again congratulate you for living through it, for doing the hard things, all while feeling like you're crazy for 2 years. And so you've birthed one book, you've got a second one on the way, and a third, plus you birthed an actual real life
Yes.
baby too.
Yep. A lot of birth.
Like, you're amazing.
And to your
Okay.
point with saying, oh, thank you. And to your point with saying that, you know, we, you put it so eloquently, but with this postpartum thing, it's hard. It's so hard. And, don't feel like you're like, I feel like everybody feels like they're failing. I feel like I'm failing every day. Like with my kid, like I look at my kid, if I'm writing too much, like working on something, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a terrible mom. But then at the same time, like something else will happen. I'm like, and then someone will like give me a compliment about like my son. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing a good job. And so I don't think it ever goes away.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I was just talking to someone the other day about there's like this little tiny, tiny fleeting moment where someone asks you something and you reply and you think in your head, "Oh my fucking God, I have got this. I am awesome." And then something will happen like and you just bite down on a piece of humble pie and you're like, "Oh, oh shit, I don't know what I'm
Yep,
doing."
I know nothing. Yep, it's like I know nothing.
Yeah. Oh, divine, divine delicious. But for the people that are like wanting to know all about becoming an author and the author career and being able to do this, um, can we hear more about what's coming up? Like, is it a sequel? Is it a separate standalone? What's going on? I'm excited. I can't wait to get a copy and have a little snoopy through.
Oh.
It takes me 500 years to read, or by the way, but I'll get there. But tell us a little bit more about what you've got coming up.
I have two. I have a standalone that's interconnected with my first book. Did not plan that. It came to me actually in the shower one day. I was like, huh, Charlotte needs a book. Like there's a story there. And then it came to me and I'm like feverishly writing in my notes app and like trying not to get my phone wet in the shower, jump out like a nut job. And I'm like jotting it down and I'm sending it to my editor friend. And I'm like, oh, do you think that this is a good book, like idea? And she's like, oh my God, write it. And my other book, which is going to be my second book, it's called Fall from Grace. And I've been told when I described it to somebody, which I loved, they said it's like, oh, it's like Gossip Girl meets Gilmore Girls. And I'm like, okay, I like that. And like that's what one of my beta readers said. So I like that. And it's about a New York socialite who has a fall from grace. She has a big scandal. Her reputation is tarnished, and she runs away to a small town and finds refuge there with the rugged single dad bar owner. And they, get together. And but it does her past come back to haunt her? And can Grace stop falling and stay in place?
Oh, you have sold it. I'm a dark romance reader. I like to read things that really upset me. But I also, again, in polarity, am such a binge watcher of feel-good things, such as Gossip Girl, and I just finished Gilmore Girls. That sounds amazing. And I also love with the interconnected standalone, how characters do just kind of pop up in the woodwork, and it's like, ooh, I love how the inspiration drops for authors. I find it so curious, and I love all the different ways. So I love that was in the shower, literally, where like you were just so relaxed, and it's like, boom, the character was like, I
Literally.
need my story told.
And when you read my first book, it's so in character for for this character that it was like it's she's a hurricane and she literally is insane, like wild. She's a wild one. And so I'm like, okay, it's totally, yeah. I mean, it's on brand.
Yeah. That's even more perfect. I didn't know about the book world. I didn't even know what a trope was or all these genres and things. I'm just curious, Stephanie, were you in Bookland before you started writing or just a reader?
I loved reading. Oh my goodness. I'm such a reader since like sixth grade, seventh grade with the Twilight Saga. That was my gateway drug, I always say. Love to read. And I read pretty fast, so I like devour books very quickly. So I'm like blessed in that way that I get to like dive into so many different worlds frequently, but then I have book hangovers, so then it's hard to like go into like the next thing. So I kind of repeat like some of my favorites to like get that like quench my thirst for certain like tropes because I'm like a sucker for like a small town and like the sweet little romances, but then I love like things that like you said rip my heart out and they're going to make me cry for like 4 days and like I'm never going to forget it. uh
Oh, I love that.
So
And
yeah, I mean, I love reading. I'm obsessed.
yeah. And I feel like it's such a nice little escape. And for me, reading left my station quite a while ago, and then it kind of filtered back in. And now it's sort of like my special treat to myself because I don't get a lot of even before being pregnant or any of that stuff. It was like my little gift to myself of time because I get myself into these really warped, scatterbrainy, always on the go, got stuff on sort of thing. So reading has always been my like quiet time, but I don't really gift myself it that often. And I had a question while you were speaking, Stephanie, about has it been tricky as a reader and a fan? And I want to ask what your favorite book is, by the way, but as a reader and a fan of all of these other authors' writing and words and stories, um, did it feel tricky when your own one kind of came through? Did you have comparison, or was it like, no, the story is just coming through me and wanting to be told, and spilled out?
My book is so different from anything I've ever read. I think it apart from like the suspense, like there's a little bit of like a suspense. I love suspense, so I wanted to put that into the book as well. So I think that that was like me projecting my own like preference. Like there's a little arc at the end where it's you don't know what's going to happen. It has, and someone described it as like a mystery element, like with suspense, and that was the perfect way to like put it. So indulgement that I put into it, but I think it's so different. I knew nothing about foster kids or anything like that, and it's very strange that it came to me the way it did. But their, like I said, their fight scene was so clear. And I was like, well, they definitely know each other from childhood. And I kind of like was like puzzle piecing. I'm like, they have to have known each other from childhood if they're this connected to each other. And they're so young. They're only like 18, 19 in the beginning when they're having this huge fight. And I'm like, well, what drove them here? And then I thought, oh, well, one of them gets adopted and the other one doesn't. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. It was kind of like just putting together puzzle pieces. But I think reading promotes writing, not necessarily like, and I get that some people can't write and read simultaneously. I feel like it helps me because I read these beautiful worlds, and I'm like, I want to build my own beautiful world too. And so it gives me like, the kick in the butt I need to get my butt in the chair and like type, which sometimes I need. And but yeah.
Oh, so lovely. So cool. So cool that you're able to do that, like you say. And I love that your book was specifically, it felt different to anything that you've read. So you can like, I don't know, you can I can like picture it in my brain of like where it fits on the shelf next to all of the other people. So it's just like feels like it fits and it's nice, you know?
Thank you. That's so sweet. And to your question, with my favorite book, um, I'm like I said, I love Twilight. But my favorite book that it stays with me, and I keep going back to it and talk about one that rips your heart out. It's called Semper by Sempere. Yeah. And Semper Redemption. There's two, and then there's also a novella. I think there's two novellas. Yeah, there's two novellas that go along with it. And when I tell you, it's so well written and just it immerses you into the world. It's got mafia, it's a romance, it's one of the best stories. And I read a lot, so it's one of the best stories I've ever read, and it literally makes you cry every time. And I've read it. I know what's gonna happen. And like if you want something to tear your heart out, like that's the perfect book.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Because yeah, like I said earlier, I like to upset myself. So and I haven't read any Mafia before, so I'm going to add that to my TBR, and that can be my first Mafia to make me really upset. I'm excited.
It's very long. Warning, it's very long.
Okay.
But it's so good. It has to do with human trafficking. It's beautiful. Like it's like a true story of loving oneself, about family. It's beautiful. I'm not gonna tell you any like thing about it because I went in blind. I knew nothing about it, and I think that's the way you should read it.
Okay. I will do. That's my favorite way to go into things anyway, is going in blind. I just read like I'll just see like on TikTok or something, someone will say, "Oh my God, like something wild and crazy and upsetting." And I'm like, "Boop, add to add to TBR."
You just have to be ready to read the second one because the first one it ends in like a goodish place, but you kind of have that like that like feeling of like when you're at the top of a roller coaster and then like it's about to come down. You kind of have that feeling towards the end of the first book. And yeah, it's you have to just be ready to read the second. And the
Okay.
novella is beautiful. And then there's a spin-off with one of the characters called Maid. And you don't understand this one character and you want to hate him. And he's like this bad, big bad, like I mean, talk about like an alpha male who you like don't like and you hate throughout the whole series. And then when you read this book, you're like, oh my God, I love him. And I understand him so much more.
Oh my God. Thank you for the rec. Perfect, perfect, perfect. It is on my TBR. I'm going to, well, it'll probably take me 3.7 years to read an entire book on its own, but that's okay. That's okay. We will make it work. Um, but back to you, most gorgeous.
Something to look forward
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Um, do you have anything to like advice to give to a walnut who is feeling stuck in some way or somewhere, um, and they're just sitting in their little cocoon, wishing that things were different or wishing that they could, and then insert whatever it may be. Any advice for a walnut that thinks they're a peanut?
I love that. I think that, well, I don't think you know what you don't know until you know, right? So certain things you want, certain things, but you're not going to know what's meant for you until it comes, and you're not going to know what's not meant for you until usually there's a big breaking point. But I think it's helpful, at least for me, to write lists of things I want, things I don't want, things that are working, things that need to change. And I think that is look at that list, and then I try and do the most whatever's manageable, the most manageable on that list. So whether it's I want to put makeup on more, or I want to be a better friend, like I want to call my friends more, and like whatever your goal is on those lists, whatever's the most manageable that you don't like that you can cut out, whatever's the most manageable that you can do for yourself. I think that those are the small little habits that transform, and then they transform into bigger habits. And give yourself grace. Like I said, we're not going to know like things until other things happen. Like even whether it's, I was talking to a friend, like I said earlier, and you're not going to know that the guy is the right guy right away, and you're not going to know that the job is the right job right away. And we need to give ourselves grace in that in between limbo stage, and have fun with the in between. And then when we do know, we can make a change, but we can't rush ourselves, and timing. And I think timing is really everything.
Oh, I love this. I love this advice so much. And the key point, I think, Stephanie, what you've mentioned there is you can change it at any time. It reminds me when my book is just like a cross between my podcast and and a biography and a couple of little like las bits in between. So it's not a fictional story or anything like that. But I remember when I was writing it, like my whole process, I ended up just throwing in the bin the whole thing, like just and starting again. I had this idea in my head, and I felt so much that I had to stick with it just because I had this idea. And a lot of my process was the fact that I didn't have to stick to the first thing that popped into my brain. I could change it. And the moment that I decided to make that change, like everything just flooded in and it came out. And then similarly to what you mentioned, it just came out and it just happened in like this big like fever dream. And all of a sudden I had all these pages and it was amazing. So I think that's a really beautiful piece of advice, the list.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah, and then the idea of things can change and it's okay and it's allowed to be. So go for it and try all the things, all the relationships, try the things, write the book, give it a go, let the ideas fall, and if we need to divert and switch tracks, like you mentioned, it's okay to do so, even though it feels hard and heavy at the time, but we're never stuck.
In my own journey, like you look at other people sometimes, not in envy, but you just look at them and you're like, and it's almost impossible not to compare, but we do sometimes need to put the blinders on and just be like, we need, like, and have pure tunnel vision, and the only person we can control and do anything about is ourselves. And the journey does start with us, and we are the main character in our own stories, and and like you said, we get to change, it. And that's like a double-sided thing, like you said, duality. Change is scary and change is beautiful. And so, it's like the best of both worlds. We get to change it and we get to change it.
Yes, I love it. And I love that you've mentioned the blinders because something that I used to say when I first started my walnut journey was slay in your lane, not stay in it, but slay, like just do well in your lane for you. And we talk about blinders on and everything. So, like, thank you for bringing that back up into my life because I forgot about my little slay in my lane slogan. And I feel like it's really helpful to me, like right now in this season of life. Um, so yeah,
Yes.
jumping back into my lane and just doing me. Um, Stephanie, where can Walnuts listening buy your book, find you on the internet, connect with you more if they're like, oh my God, I love this woman. What do I do? Where do I get all up in her grill? Where can we find you?
Aw. That's so sweet. TikTok, and Facebook, I'm Stephanie Napolitano, and I have my Facebook group is also, Stephanie Storytellers. And then I also have an Instagram page for my upcoming podcast, which is Storytelling with Stephanie.
So cool. Oh, and I forgot to even ask, what's the podcast about? Like what are we going to talk about books you're reading? Are we talking about, like I just want to quickly, I know, I'm sorry. Keep diverting everywhere, but tell me what your podcast is about.
It's going to be called Storytelling with Stephanie, and everybody says that people say that everybody has a past. I think everybody has a story, and I want to hear them all. So that's my little slogan. And I want to have people on who have similar stories to myself, similar stories to you, who have a story, because everybody has one. And I want to be able to be a safe space where people can share their experiences, hopefully help people, feel not alone. Because, we're not alone. We have, the internet, and while it's a blessed, like it could be, seem daunting and scary at times, I think that, if it's used, for good, we could feel more connected. And that's my goal.
Oh, I
Think
feel
you're
I
doing an amazing job. I love what you're doing. Like this is beautiful. Like it's so I was binging some of your podcasts before like this upcoming week before we when we scheduled, and I'm obsessed. Like and I can't like you're in my head now when I'm walking because I take a morning walk every day and you're gonna like I'm gonna be binging.
Oh my gosh. Stephanie, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was actually cut you off. I apologize, but like I was just like, oh my God, I resonate so much. I feel you on the hearing people's stories. I'm going to be binging your podcast as well. Like I love hearing about times when people have done stuff and yeah, that we you just I'm never shocked at how many walnuts there truly are in the world because there are so many brave people that are doing hard things literally every day. And something that I like hold really close to my heart is the fact that like brave things aren't necessarily always the big character arc of like quitting my job and then starting a business or like buying a rundown restaurant and it doesn't have to always be something the people that do the big things are awesome and amazing and definitely walnuts as well but sometimes being a walnut can look like being in a group situation and asking someone if you can borrow their pen, like talking to somebody out, like it can be so small and little.
Absolutely.
For me at the moment, my little walnuttings are like g going in the car and driving just up the road with my baby. Like it scares the living hell out of me. So like, being brave is so big
So
and
scary.
small. Yeah, and all of the little things in between. So like I really appreciate that there is a person like you in the world that has the intention of hearing people's stories, and I'm really looking forward to your podcast. So I will keep an eye out for that. That will be amazing.
Thank you. That means so much to me. It means so much. You don't know. Thank you for the kind words and the support. It's so beautiful.
Oh, I'm so happy that we met. And on that, Stephanie, I would love to know for my
Me too.
podcast, which we ask all of the guests on Walnut Wednesday, what does being a walnut mean to you?
Well, I love this question. And I think it's just about being brave and like everything that we've talked about, the journey and the journey. I think it's not even the destination because the journey is what makes us a walnut, right? And so if we've reached the destination, like it gets boring, right? So like we want those plot twists, we want those hard things to happen because and things to happen too. But and sometimes the good things can be scary too because we know conceive notions on certain things that could be good for us or whatnot. And I think that those are the things that make us a walnut. It's the grit in between.
I love all of your choice of words in this episode. This is the best episode ever. Thank you so much. I love that description of being a walnut.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. You made my day.
Oh, same here. Like it just it lights me up. This is my first walnut, as you know, listening. This is my first interview of the year as well. So like I am lit up, butt on fire. This episode is a walnutting for me in general because I didn't know. I was saying to Stephanie offline before Walnut, I didn't know how it was going to be with getting the baby to sleep and being, doing all the things, but we've made it work. We had connection issues, but here we are. So like I'm doing the thing and this has just lit me up. I'm so happy to like have you here, Stephanie. Like you've been the most amazing first guest of the year and you're doing amazing work in the world.
Oh, thank
Like
you so much.
I'm really looking forward to grabbing a copy. Where can we get Pretend for Me? Is that on Amazon as well?
It's on Amazon and it's on KU. And now I have a question for you as an astrology girly. What's your sign? Because we like vibe so well, and I love like astrology.
Oh, I love this. Okay, I'm a Sagittarius, and then I think my moon, is it Taurus rising? And I don't know the other one.
Okay, that's why I'm a Taurus. I'm a Taurus. That's
Oh,
why we Yep. I'm a Taurus with a Capricorn moon and a Virgo rising. All Earth.
Ooh, so you've had quite an, how has the last couple of months been for you with your Capricorn rising kind of bubbling up on the side there?
That Capricorn moon is just it Capricorn moons. It is, it comes knocking on my door.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
like, do you have enough trauma? No? Okay. Knock, knock.
Yeah, we've just come out of the of quite a wild time, I think, and especially for your star signs as well. So interesting.
The cardinal cell.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, Walnut, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a little screenshot and share and tag us on the social medias. I know that myself, and I'm speaking for you, Stephanie, hope you don't mind, would love to hear from you. And thank you for your time and for listening. And Stephanie,
Love.
thank you again for all you do in the world, for your time having a chat with me today. And I love you so much, and I'll see you on the internet.
Anytime.
Have
Thank you. Love you.
Love you, love you. Have a happy Walnut Wednesday, and Walnut, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.